Hey guys, let's do a quick walk demo. First thing you're going to want to do is set your project to the WalkCycle project. Then you're going to want to open up the WalkCycle setup file. I'm going to change my layout to the layout we set that first time in class, where we have our graph editor and our cam main and a perspective window that we'll use for selecting our controls. So I'm going to come up here and make sure this is set to cam main, turn on my textures and my lights for both windows. So now we're set up to and ready to go. You'll notice here you might have your selection masks are all on. So the first thing you want to do is select your mask button, which makes it so that we can only select curves. These are the things that we want to set keys on. This way we're not going to accidentally select the background or the geometry of our character. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure in my preferences that under animation I have auto key and weighted tangents selected. So I'm going to drag select all of my controls, and at frame 1 I'm going to hit S. So now I have a key set, so every time I manipulate my character it will set another key and remember that pose. So I'm going to select the global control and turn him 90 degrees so we're seeing him from the side. The first thing we want to do is set our contact pose. So I'm going to select the upper body control, this main sort of root control, this large control that is around his hips. And I'm going to bring him down and Y, a little bit closer to the ground, so that we can set the pose where the legs are the furthest apart, where the foot that's coming forward in our walk cycle has just come down and touched the ground. So I'm going to have it coming down on his heel. I'm going to slide it forward in Z. This foot, I'm going to slide back and see how it starts to hyperextend. So I'm going to dial in a little bit of this channel. You'll notice on the IK controls for the legs, there's a lot of additional channels other than just rotate and translate. So I'm going to use this raise heel, which will raise the heel up and back so that his foot starts to roll off. And also slide it back in Z just a little bit farther. So this is the pose. It's called your contact pose. And it's the most important pose to set because it's going to determine the length of your character's stride. So if the right foot is back and the left foot is coming down, we're going to want to have the opposite pose with our arms for a natural arm swing. So here I'm going to, from the shoulder, rotate the arm forward. Oh, so I'm having a little bit of a problem here with so that's swinging forward. I'm going to bend the elbow a little bit. Wrist. So we'll want to do the opposite. I'm going to get a little bit of clavicle movement in there too. And here I'll swing it back. So now I'm selecting the shoulder. And rotate it back. There we go. So this is the contact pose for our character. So I'm going to again drag select before I move on to any other pose and make sure that I've got a key selected on all the controls, just in case. So I'm going to hit S again. And now I should have a key on every single control. So We're going to make this walk cycle 21 frames long. So I'm going to hit S again at 21 because we need frame 1 and frame 21 to match. Okay, so halfway between frame 1 and frame 21 is going to be frame 11. So I'm going to set a key here, but now we need to create the opposite pose with the other foot coming forward. So we're going to mirror this pose. So we'll just do this manually. Bring this foot forward. Take the heel raise out and rotate it up. See? And then we'll take this foot and we will slide it back in Z. And take out the rotation and we will raise the heel. Slide it back in Z, so similar. Just before, just a little bit. Okay, good. So now we need to make the arms the opposite. So start with this side. Rotate it forward a little bit. Starting with the clavicle. I'll swing my arm forward, out a little bit. A little bit of bend to the elbow. To the wrist. Okay, so now we'll do this one, starting with the clavicle, scapula. I'm going to rotate it back a little. And then we'll rotate the arm back. Oops. We'll straighten out the elbow a little bit. Rotation in the wrist. There we go, we've got the opposite. So now we need to create our crossover pose. So let's go to frame 6. And we're going to drag select and we're going to hit S. So in this pose, if we look at it and our right foot is the one back here, we know that it's the one that lifts up and will be crossing over. So I'm going to take out the heel raise. I'm going to add more rotation in. And lift it up. Now this one we need to make sure when we select the IK control that it's completely on the ground. So let's get rid of these rotations and the heel raise. We want it to be centered directly under the body because the weight is on this foot. Because the weight is on this foot, we need to shift the body over. In X. So we also might want to shift this over just slightly. Okay, so now let's fix these arms. This arm right here, this shoulder control is it's rotated out. So it's not intersecting the body. So this arm had been forward, so it's beginning to swing back. So remembering our secondary animation, we're going to have it kind of pointing towards where it was before. Okay. So now let's do the other arm. So this one had been back, but now it's going to be swinging forward. So I'm going to take the Y rotation here and kind of push it towards where it's rotating. I think let's straighten this elbow out a little bit more so it's favoring where it was coming from. The same thing with the wrist. So we're dragging the wrist a little bit behind. There we go. So notice this one arm here, the right arm is, the interpolation is really crazy. So I think we've run into some gimbal over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the arm controls and hit Q so I can shift select all of these controls going down here. And then I'm going to use my left mouse button to select the rotation channels over here, and then inside my graph editor I'm going to drag select all the curves. I'm going to come up here and say Euler filter. Let's see if that straightens it out at all. Yeah. So that fixed the rotation that we had going on there. So now we've got, we go from our contact pose to our crossing pose to our next contact pose. So now what we need to do, let's go back to this pose. Frame 6. I'm going to marquee select everything. I'm going to hit S to make sure I've got a key on absolutely everything. And then I'm going to copy this to 16 and paste it. So, but now we need the opposite of this pose, right? So remember, the big thing we had changed here was the x translation. So if we look at the x translation curve, it's at 11 on one side, right? So this needs to be the opposite. Let's make this minus 11 because he's got to put the weight over the other foot now, right? Because this is the foot that's going to be planted and on the ground. So this foot, let's look at the x translation here. Got to put this on the ground. So let's put it down. And we'll get rid of that. And now it's firmly planted on the ground, and his weight is shifted over it. So this foot we want to have in the air. Raise it up. And we'll rotate it forward. And we will move it in on X. I feel it should be a little bit further behind. And this foot, I think, needs to be further forward. There we go. Oh, we gotta fix the arms still too. So let's do that. Cute. So I can multi-select without a manipulator. I am going to copy this pose to this side. There we go. But now I need this arm in this frame, so I'm going to copy it here. Go over to frame 16 rather, and then I'm going to select the other side. It's important to select the controls in the same order. So if you start with the clavicle and go down, make sure you do it for the same to the what you're copying it to. Paste it. So now we have the arms going, but we've got this weird, this pretty extreme side-to-side motion going on here. So let's fix that. One thing I noticed with the X translation on this foot and also on this foot, there shouldn't be any X translation at this point. So if I look at it, if this is, what you want it to swing in. So let's just make all the rest of these zero. And then the same thing over here. Get just the X translation. All of these should be 0, except for where it swings in. So now I feel like his body's moving side to side a little bit too much. So let's adjust that. So we'll select the upper body control. We'll select the X translation. Let's look at it from the front. We'll look at it with an orthographic view. And I will hide the stage so we can see it better. So it should be 0 here. Here its weight should be over the left foot. So I think that's about right. You want this arrow, if we traced it right down, to be like where the inside of his ankle would be. So I'm going to say that's like 8.2. So these ones in the middle, these should all be 0. So I'll make these 0. And then when it's at the other opposite, this should be minus 8.2. So now if we script through here, okay. So let's talk a little bit about so we've got one more time, I drag select all the controls. I put my cursor inside my graph editor and I hit F so that I can frame all of my curves. So what we want to do is, when you're doing a cycle, is you want to come up here to curves inside the graph editor, go to pre-infinity and cycle, curves, post-infinity, cycle. Another thing you want to do is you want to go to view and make sure you can view infinity. So check this on. Now when you select any one of your controls, let's go back to the X translation here, and we frame this, you can see that this curve goes on for forever. But there's like little bumps that are happening. Like if this is midway through the cycle, you'll see this is a pretty smooth interpolation. We want to have the same interpolation at the beginning and end of the cycle. So I'm going to select the curves here, and then I'm going to shift select the handles, and I'm going to drag those down so that now when I deselect, you can see it's a nice smooth cycle going on forever, which is what we want to have when we go through our animation. So right now, we've just set two of our major keys, our contact pose and our crossover pose. And this is what we get with just those two keys. So now let's talk about setting our extreme down pose. So this pose is going to be it's called the low extreme, and this is the pose where the back foot will have rolled off the ground altogether, because even though this is our contact pose, this foot is going to continue moving backwards in space until it rolls off the toe. So let's get to that. And it's also the lowest point in Y translation of your so if we go 1, 2, let's set it at frame 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag select everything. I'm going to hit S to set a key here. I'm going to lower the body in Y translation because this is the low point. Also, you're going to take this foot, and now this foot has to, I can't control on this foot. Let's go back to the other perspective window. This foot is going to have continued sliding backwards. So if it's here, I'm going to go ahead and copy this to frame 3. So we know where it was, but we need it to continue moving backwards. So I'm going to select it and slide it back in space further. I should select this control at the very tip and roll him up on his toe, right? But we still got to bring it back a little bit farther. So I'm going to slide this back in X. Toe control right down here at the tip of his foot, and rotate this up more. So the weight is completely off this foot. There's no way the body would be balancing on this anymore. And see how it continues sliding back in space. The other foot, it's going to be completely planted. So we got to take this rotation out. Another feature of this pose is that typically this, your center of gravity, your hips, are going to be behind the foot that the weight is on. So you can see that I would probably want to slide it forward just a little bit so it's just behind here. So this is where we're catching the body as it like begins to fall forward. Okay. And that's pretty much what we need for this pose. Actually, let's just drag select. I didn't really change anything with the upper body, so let's just select the root control and the legs. And I'm going to copy this pose, and then I'm going to go to frame 13, and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so now we're going to want to just make sure this is a mirror of this pose. So the only thing we changed with the translation here was the X, the value of X, right? So over here it's 5. Let's make it 5.5. 5, so it's a nice even number. Here we're going to make this minus 5.55, and we will smooth out that tangent by hitting this button here. Okay, so now we've mirrored what is going on with the hips, but now we got to mirror the feet. And I will slide it forward. And I will take out the rotation and heel raise. And then I will select the toe control, because that's how we rolled it up on its toe. And I will make this 0. Okay, so now we got to get this foot back to the other foot was. So I'm going to select this foot and the toe, and I'm going to copy, go back to frame 13, I'm going to select the IK control and the toe, and I'm going to paste that onto there. In between the crossing pose and the contact pose is the high extreme, and that's the next key that we need to set. So let's go ahead and we'll go to frame 9 and we'll set that key here. So the first thing I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to marquee select everything and hit S. Okay, so we know that this is the foot that is about to come down, and the weight is firmly on the left foot. So let's zero out this heel. I feel like the body is a little bit too far forward here. I want it to be situated right over the ball of the foot. So I'm going to use the Z translation to move the body back a little bit. And this is also the point where your character is going to be the highest in the air. Okay? So this is going to be at its highest here. Let's get it all the way up here. Now this foot is swinging through, but it hasn't gotten to the contact pose yet. So I'm going to select the Z translation. I'm going to bring it back slightly. I'm going to drag the toe just a little bit. So we look at it in here, we want it to coming forward. Ooh. There we go. That looks pretty good. And everything about this back foot is fine. So, and let's look at the Y translation on the body here. This is going to be your extreme high. This is where you've gotten to the highest point. Like you could make it a little bit higher and add a little bit of roll off, heel raise here if you wanted. Oops. I kind of like, for this character, since he has like really long legs anyway, I'm going to go ahead and zero out the heel raise here. Make this 0. And lower him a little bit because I think that get it to the point right before his leg hyperextends. So right around there. So now we need to make the opposite of that key. And in order to do that, we got to make sure that we've got so here, let's hit S. We're going to want to copy this to frame 19. So I'm copying frame 9 of the root, the upper body control, to frame 19. And paste it. But remember, we want the X translation to be the opposite. So I'm going to get rid of this key. Just hit S. The Y translation, we want the same. The Z translation, look at this. Which is the forward and back. We don't want to break that. Hold on. Oh no, what have I done? Just smoothing these out a little bit. So now we're gonna fix the feet here at this one. So we're wanting to get this pose here. Let's look at the, with this root control selected, let's look at the Y translation curve. This is also, let's select the first and last key. We're going to hit this spline control, and then I'm going to shift select, oops, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to shift select both, and then I'm going to shift select the handles here to smooth that out. Because remember, we want to have this curve when we've got it all deselected look nice and smooth. So let's go to 19. So that we've got the hips right now. So we got to get the feet right. So remember what we had done is we had selected this control here, the foot, And we just got rid of the heel raise. We zeroed that out. And here, what else do we have? Frame 9. So I think I moved it back a little bit in X. And I rotated it down some so we were dragging the toe. So now, pretty much similar. And there we go. But let's, this is kind of messed up. This will not interpolate nicely. So I'm going to select this whole curve. I'm just going to select this button to smooth out the tangents. The other thing I want to do is marquee select. Go to frame 19, hit S. So I'm going to do that, all these controls, just to make sure I've got a key on all those frames. So now when I play it back, we should have the beginning of a walk cycle. This is your contact pose, your extreme low position, your crossing pose, and your extreme high position, which goes again into the opposite contact pose, extreme low, crossing, extreme high, and then back to where we began, to our contact pose. And there we have the beginning of a walk cycle. So this is what we want to have for next week. If you have any questions, please let me know. You guys know my email. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.